AI has enormous potential to transform every team and organization, but only if you really understand how to use it. The playbook is simply 4 steps: identify, investigate, instruct, and introduce. This recipe is really only going to make sense if you understand how the sausage is made. So first, we're going to be pulling back the curtain on how generative AI works.
Who knew that to get the current generation of AI working, you'd need...
Let's talk about building Skynet. If you take anything away from today, it's this. The reality is that AI has enormous potential to transform every team and organization, but only if you really understand how to use it properly. And that's my goal today, to give you greater clarity and direction so you can, this year, realize the potential of what is possible with AI for your operations to do work faster and smarter. And you're going to want to stick with me to the end because we're going to be building up to this playbook from first principles of the mechanics behind the magic. Before we get into all that, let me ask you this. Do you ever look at your tasks on your task list and think, surely in this day and age, it should be possible to use AI to really help lift the load off the shoulders? Surely it should be possible to get a helping hand from AI. But with these chat-based tools, all we seem to really be able to do is ask simple questions, sometimes get correct answers, and have it draft a few emails and such. While this is how people are mostly using this technology, this is really just the tip of the iceberg. There's literally an ocean of valuable use cases that AI can address that range in flavor from performing bulk operations on large amounts of documents to distilling vast knowledge into just the few specifics that are relevant for you to take action on, to even having it draft reoccurring work documents. Let me introduce myself. My name is Dino Gane-Palmer. I'm the CEO at Prescatter. At Prescatter, we've spent years helping innovation-focused leaders just like you make smarter R&D, product development, corporate strategy decisions. We've had the privilege of working with hundreds of successful brands and companies across industries, delivering tangible results they can count on. So whether clients are navigating AI for the first time or looking to scale its use in their business, I want you to know that we've been with these types of organizations every step of the way. And what I'm going to be sharing today is based on those real world experiences. Now, before we dive deeper into today's session, I also want to quickly recap our last live session. Last time around, we did a deep dive into using generative AI for 3 of these below the iceberg use cases that go beyond simple chat conversations. First, we talked about creating work documents, from meeting minutes to proposals to other types of documents. Secondly, we showed you how you can monitor topics such as keep up with new technologies or competitors. And then thirdly, we also demoed website mining, extracting crucial data from massive websites such as regulatory websites. As well as covering these use cases, I also have to apologize for a rude interruption that occurred. There I was presenting when our team thought it would be fun to throw an AI clone of me called Mini-Me into the mix, or Mini-D into the mix. It was really not cool. And I've been telling the team, and again and again, and I'm going to tell them even now, we can't have any surprises. We have to keep the AI in the box. Huh? And entertainment. Sorry, we're having a side conversation. People aren't coming here to be entertained. Do you know who our clients are? This is a serious webinar for serious people. Nevertheless, I can't say I'm thrilled, but because he was so popular in the post-event survey, Mini-D will be making an appearance later. So I know you're all screaming, Dino, where's the playbook? I want the playbook, give me the playbook. But I have to tell you, this recipe is really only going to make sense if you understand how the sausage is made. So first, we're going to be pulling back the curtain on how generative AI works. No gimmicks, just the raw mechanics behind the magic. Then, with this understanding, you'll start to be able to infer the technology's limits and understand why it has so many weird quirks, such as forgetfulness. With all this, finally, the AI playbook becomes clear. Understanding the limits, it's easy to understand why we need to overcome these limits and the work we need to do for our most valuable use cases. But we won't stop there. We're going to be talking about Skynet, which is what we have to look forward to as the current limits of this technology evaporates over the next few decades. And if we have time, we'll also do Q&A. Please drop in your questions. We'll get back to you over email if we don't have time to touch on them today. So let's dive in. How generative AI works. Generative AI works using neural networks, the same technology behind things like the autocomplete feature you see in like a Google search box, or even when you're typing on your phone. As hard as it is to believe, chatbots such as generative AI are essentially taking this autocomplete feature to an extreme level. These neural networks, which power autocomplete and generative AI, are essentially input-output boxes. AI developers show these input-output boxes repeated examples of input-output pairs. On the input side, the developer could show the neural network 1 plus 1. And on the output side, show the neural network 2. And the next example might be 1 plus 2 on the input side, and then on the output side, 3. So the AI developer might show this neural network millions of these examples. As the neural network sees these examples, it recognizes the patterns or relationships between the inputs and outputs and starts to learn for itself how to transform input that it's never seen before into the correct output answer. It's almost like teaching a child to pronounce words. If we repeat the word apple enough times with enough variation and point to the fruit, like apple, 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 eventually they learn that despite the tone, when you say apple, they themselves can point to the apple themselves. So this is how the training of the neural network takes place. And so you can imagine it's a little bit like a detective analyzing the clues that are the inputs and uncovering the outputs that it might lead to. And so with enough examples, the detective gets better at connecting the dots and figuring out even unfamiliar scenarios. That is why once the network is trained, when users provide the input, the network can magically autocomplete the output. So the autocomplete feature in web searches, for example, is powered by a neural network trained on countless past web searches. And so when you start typing in the first few letters, it predicts the words based on patterns it has learned from those past examples of what users would eventually type after those first few words. Generative AI works in the same way. When you type in a chat message, it responds by auto-completing a response. Now, there's a lot more to this explanation than what I've provided here, but for our purposes today, what you essentially need to know is that Gen AI models are essentially input-output machines. And with this understanding, you might start to think of huge philosophical questions. And to help us with these philosophical questions, this is actually a good moment to introduce you to Mini D, my AI clone from last time. Hey, Mini D.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for all your support. It really means a lot. You all literally stopped them from pulling the plug on me.
But you're a computer. So let me ask you, given neural networks are solving math problems through pattern matching rather than a formula, do neural networks really understand math, or are they just guessing based on past examples?
That's a good question, Dino. Neural networks are modeled on the neural networks inside human brains. If I asked you to add 539,754 to 457,684, I bet my guess from my AI neural network would be better than your guess from your human neural network. Am I right?
Yeah, but I wouldn't be guessing though. I know the rules of addition. I know how to add digits and carry over numbers.
Oh, but you are guessing. Your guess is just to follow a step-by-step formula to get at an answer instead of immediately spitting out one. Neural networks can do that too. That's how the new reasoning models work. They guess steps to think through a problem and then follow the steps.
Okay, let's get back on topic. There's a lot more to Gen AI than what we've covered. But for today's purposes, what you need to know is that AI models are essentially input-output machines and input-output machines trained on examples. And now that you know that these things are just input-output machines, you can probably start to grasp that this technology has limitations. So let's talk about generative AI's limitations. This is nowhere near Skynet. First and foremost, if you take anything away from today, it's this. The quality of the output from the neural network or the AI is entirely dependent on the quality of the input. Let me repeat that. The quality of the output from the AI is entirely dependent on the quality of the input. Garbage in means garbage out. When we get to the playbook in a moment, you'll now understand what a lot of this playbook is really about, is feeding in the right quality input, because these things can't read your mind and everything comes down to that input. Secondly, these neural networks don't have inherent memory. Remember, they're just input-output machines. This is why every time you have a new conversation with your favorite chatbot, you need to explain everything all over again. ChatGPT has this kind of memory thing where it kind of distills things to a few things, but still it doesn't remember every single detail of everything you've spoken to it about. So all this means is that unlike staff who are learning and adapting, these things are not learning from each new conversation. With each new conversation, you're starting over. A third limitation is that these networks are not of infinite size. They only have so many nodes on the input side to take in information, and they only have so many nodes on the output side to output information. At the moment, most models can take in about 96,000 words on the input side. So if you've ever had a very long conversation with a chatbot or uploaded a lot of documents and it started to forget some parts of the conversations, this is why. Some parts of the conversation just didn't fit into that input context window and they were omitted. So the AI neural network does not have all of that information in that conversation when it's formulating a response. Hence why it's kind of forgetful sometimes. On the output side, these models at the moment can respond with about 6,000 words. So if you ever tried to get the AI to write a novel, this is why it struggles. Google's models have bigger context windows, but that's another conversation. Another limitation is that neural networks don't wake up by themselves and start doing things by themselves. They're still input-output machines. You need to go in and press that return key. So let me provide an illustration to make this easier to understand. Imagine you've been given a gourmet kitchen filled with the best appliances and tools. Now, you have this gourmet kitchen. Does that mean you, as a user of this kitchen, you're instantly now a Michelin star chef and you're gonna get Michelin star food? Of course not. You need recipes, techniques, and a system around this gourmet kitchen to have it produce Michelin star meals. In the case of a gourmet kitchen, this system is a restaurant. A restaurant provides skilled staff, waiters, and even a menu to make all of this work. So you as a consumer or a user can simply pick what you want and have it delivered to you. Similarly, generative AI models need a surrounding system around them to get at those really advanced below the iceberg use cases. So the work of the playbook is really to build this surrounding system so that you can get to these high value use cases with the technology. Now, before we get into this playbook, Mini D, did I miss any limitations that neural networks and AI have these days?
AI's current limitations include no memory, no self-awareness, a simple input-output machine. Yes, you nailed it all right. But, also keep in mind that I work super fast. I don't need sleep. I don't get distracted easily. And you can easily make 1,000 copies of me at almost no additional cost. Plus, I have an uncanny ability to outthink you at chess, code, and, let's be honest, probably your job. But hey, at least I can't remember it all yet.
Yeah. Where is that plug? Anyway, for many people, the challenge isn't deciding whether to use AI. It's figuring out how to use it effectively, because generative AI won't solve your problems by itself. And we understand this at Prescouter acutely because this is what we've been working with clients on for the last few years. And we've even actually built an application called Auxee that helps overcome some of these limitations for these higher value use cases. So based on these experiences, we've developed a very simple playbook. So if you want to kind of DIY this yourself, you can do so. So let me go through the playbook. The playbook is simply 4 steps: identify, investigate, instruct, and introduce. With the first step, identify, what we are saying is that given that these AI models are simply input-output boxes, and some amount of work needs to be done to engineer a system around these models, let's focus on the use cases for which it's worth doing this work. In our experience, we're talking about maybe 8 hours to 40 hours of work over a few weeks for each use case, but it's still a time commitment. So we just can't pick up every single thing that your team does and start engineering it to be done by AI. You have to pick the use cases where AI can have the most significant impact. So what are those things? In our experience, the low-hanging fruit is focusing on tasks that are primarily reoccurring and time-consuming. These are candidates for automation, essentially. For instance, this could be reoccurring intellectual tasks like reviewing documents or claims all of which can be automated to boost productivity and yield a higher return on investment. To paint a picture a little bit, a medical practice we work with needed to review thousands of patient notes weekly to prepare them for submission to insurance. Now, previously, their team of analysts would manually read through each patient note after a procedure, extract critical information such as diagnosis, the procedure details, supporting documentation, and they would be kind of ensuring it's aligned with the insurance requirements before these claims were submitted. So what we did was we helped them transform their kind of patient note screening process. Using AI, this practice now automatically reviews and analyzes these patient notes, extracting those key information like diagnosis, procedures, and documentation so that it's in compliance with the insurance guidelines. So what once required a team of 12 analysts, now really only needs one analyst to kind of manage some of the exceptions that the AI can't handle. And so they've significantly improving their efficiency and accuracy and freeing up all that staff to do higher level analyses and work. So the first step, which we call identify, is recognizing that we don't have infinite hours, and so we need to prioritize where the AI can have the biggest impact in our teams and in our work. Another benefit of prioritizing high-value use cases is that if you end up at the end of this 4-step process deciding to scale up your implementation to make things perhaps easier to use, the ROI will really be self-evident for your colleagues and management. So that the first step is really just identifying the low-hanging fruit. The second step is investigate. So once you've identified the target use case, we now need to investigate the current process for how the work is done for that use case. We need to figure out whether the input for the use case comes from a user, an event such as an email arriving in an inbox, or whether it's some kind of scheduled weekly or monthly type of activity. We also need to understand where all the information flows are for this use case, which applications they're coming in from, so it can be fed into the AI for it to produce the output we want. We essentially learn all this by conducting user research sessions with the people who do the work. You simply set up a time to meet with the relevant staff and observe them as they execute these tasks. Now, this is an agenda for how we run a user research session when we work with clients. Typically, we're doing this remotely, which allows us to record the session and their screen as they're kind of screen sharing. So it's really invaluable for us to kind of go back to that recording and review it later and review it a second time and find all those things we missed the first time. So we make sure to get consent for that upfront first. We then have staff provide some background on their responsibilities, especially as it relates to the use case. And then we get into the meat of it, which is having them screen share as they walk through their work. For us, the key part of the screen sharing is asking participants to think out loud. This is having the participants speak out loud all the things they're thinking as they're actually moving the mouse and doing things on their screen. Encouraging the participant to articulate their thought processes really helps us gain a deeper insight into their workflows. Now, as they walk through showing what they're doing, pay special attention to the specific spreadsheets, CRMs, ERP, all the applications they're using, because this is essentially where the data is going to be coming from for the AI later on. Remember, garbage in equals garbage out. As we discussed earlier, we need to shape the input to the AI, and these applications are the different sources for that input. Now, as you're going through the rest of this user research session, you want to really make sure you understand everything as comprehensively as possible. Why? Because you're going to have to develop prompts to model all of this work. So if you feel like running this type of session could be a little awkward, I hate to keep pointing things back to us, but at Prescouted, this is why sometimes it's useful to have an external party come in and help you with this. But you could also find someone on your team who's not too threatening, who can kind of take on this role and do this work. With that, the second thing you need to investigate as part of this step is the AI application you'll be modeling this work in. You could try using a chatbot. It can be a little hard to feed in the data over and over again because it's not really, these chatbots aren't really designed to work in that way, but maybe for a prototype you can work with one of the existing chat-based applications. But the main thing to keep in mind is that the AI is going to have two types of input. We're going to be feeding two types of input into the neural network. The first is kind of use case-wide instructions and information. This is information that's going to be repeated for every single task for this use case. It could be, you could think of it almost like a manual for how the AI should work with this use case. The second type of information that's going to be fed into the neural network is that one-time or task-specific information. So this is where you really need to think about how you can easily shape the input going into that neural network, repeating some of the same information across the use case, across various tasks, while also having a way to have kind of task-specific information coming in. So there are various applications you could use. For example, you could use a spreadsheet-based application and plugins which allow you to connect this spreadsheet to an AI model. So this allows you to, for example, imagine that each row in the spreadsheet could be for one specific task, and then there could be a specific cell that sends some information from that row to the AI. And so when that's in that cell, you can have use case information for everything in that spreadsheet, kind of the instruction manual, and also pull in that row specific, task specific information. So that's kind of one way you could model kind of doing this work using spreadsheets. And spreadsheets are okay, but it's not necessarily the best user experience. So this is why we at Prescouted have developed Auxee, an application we've purpose-built to assist clients with building out these high-value use cases. And we'll show you a little bit of that in a moment. Now, the third step is Instruct. Once you've identified the tasks and chosen the appropriate AI tool, the next step is to instruct the AI through effective prompt engineering. So this is where you're going to not only provide prompts, but you're also going to add in the data flows that you identified as needing to come in from other systems. So you may need to talk to your colleagues in IT or figure out whether there are APIs or imports you can do to make this work with the specific solution you've chosen. So you need to figure out which applications the data is going to come in from and how is this going to be triggered. Is it through a user input, an event, or a scheduled event? The success of your AI implementation really hinges on your ability to communicate requirements clearly and directly in your prompts. Remember, the AI has no inherent understanding of your organization's context or specific needs other than what you explicitly communicate to it. Garbage in is garbage out. So think of your AI as you would any new team member joining your organization. Without that context and clear direction, even the most capable person won't understand what they need to accomplish. And the same is true of the AI. So when you evaluate the clarity of your prompts, you can follow what I call the new colleague test. Imagine sharing your instructions with a newly hired colleague and asking that person to execute this task based solely on those instructions. They have, you can imagine that this person has some understanding from general industry because the AI has been trained on the internet, but they don't have any specific understanding of the nuances of your business. So if when you read those instructions, you think they would struggle to produce or understand what you're looking for, your AI system is going to face similar challenges. Secondly, rather than creating individual prompts, remember you have to create templates. With these templates, the key is to separate the fixed part of the prompt, which is related to the use case-wide instructions, from the task-specific part that will change with every pull of the data or every run of the use case. This separation really allows for easy modification of the inputs for each task while maintaining the core instructions to kind of make that prompt effective. The input data is typically coming from existing systems or staff using those systems, and the data will ideally be funneled via an API to run against this kind of template prompt. How this all comes together really depends on which AI solution you're using, maybe the spreadsheet solution I mentioned earlier, but I'll show you how this works for Auxee. So we have here in this application kind of an example which has, which I'll quickly go through. But at the bottom here, you see we have these different tools, which you can sort of think as different sources. So we have here, for example, ability to pull in information from your internal documents like SharePoint or MS Teams drives. We can pull in web search information. So, and this toolbar is extensible to different applications. And so you can pull in information from different sources. In this particular case, we used, for this very simple example for our limited time today, we pulled in a Google search on new printing technologies. And then we just run a very simple chat prompt or prompt after that, which is just to summarize the above content to kind of highlight what's kind of new and relevant. And so this is a very simple flow, but you can see here we have the pulling in of the information, we have the prompt, and so this could be basically kind of a use case wide instructions or use case wide flow. And so what I can do, for example, is I can share this with my colleagues, and then they can kind of get a copy only version of this, and for their use case or for their tasks, they can kind of adjust one or two details here, maybe the specific search or maybe the specific prompt, and then press this play button and essentially rerun it for their version of the task, as it were. And then this will essentially go back through and update everything. Alternatively, maybe this is something that I'm running every week, and I want to kind of schedule to run weekly or maybe monthly. And so this could be a task where it's not something I share with my colleagues, but something that I want to run every week and have it repeat over and over again. So it's essentially scanning for new technologies every week and having a summary. So you can basically get an idea of some of the variables you have here to play with. And again, this is just a very simple example to show you how all of this fits together, pulling in different information from different applications, putting together a string of prompts to work with that information, and then being able to have this flow codified, so that you can kind of reuse it, your colleagues can reuse it, or you yourself can reuse it for different situations or for repeats on repeated reoccurrences for at other times, maybe on a scheduled basis. So that's just a quick example, again, just to give you an idea of what's possible. So with that, let's jump into the last step, which is introduce. So for this last step, introduce, we want to introduce this AI solution to a pilot group of colleagues and monitor how it works. This pilot phase really allows you to assess how it's doing, the impact on existing workflows, and monitor how things might need to be adjusted with this kind of new AI staff member. It's essential to communicate transparently with your team, addressing any concerns they might have, emphasizing that AI is really a tool to augment work, not really replace them. And remember, AI has limitations, which we've covered today. So it's really not a replacement, it's really a productivity booster. When you roll this application out, you also want to make sure you provide training for folks who are working with the application on kind of the real world scenarios that they're likely to occur or encounter when they're using this tool. During this phase, you also want to consider maybe how roles might change, performance metrics might change, and even the nature of the work might change as it relates to how folks work with AI for this use case. Now, if you are trying to quantify the ROI impact of this project, there's a simple formula you can use, which is for automation related use cases, very simple, which is the number of tasks that the AI processes in a week, a month, or a year, times the amount of time a human would take to conduct this task and the hourly cost of that person. And so with this, you should be able to get a very clear idea of the quantifiable value that this solution can provide. And use that to maybe look at whether you want to improve the solution, roll it out to a wider group, or do kind of bigger things. So that's the playbook. And by following these steps, targeting these high value use cases and doing the work we describe in this playbook, you can really be ready to maximize value that you get from AI this year. So what do you think, Minnie D? Any comments?
Well, Dino, I think you've just delivered a great sales pitch for Skynet. You know, the kind of AI that is a little more self-sufficient. Who knew that to get the current generation of AI working, you'd need humans?
Which is why, AI adoption has been slow in organizations. The technology doesn't really work out of the box.
This is definitely not the AI that Sarah Connor was warning us about.
Yeah, with all of AI's current limitations, no memory, no self-awareness, no independent decision-making, you might wonder, how could we ever get to something as powerful as Skynet? Is it even possible for today's AI systems to evolve into this super intelligent, all-knowing entity like the ones we see in sci-fi movies? Let's talk about building Skynet. Today's generative AI models, like ChatGPT, are essentially input-output systems. But what happens as this technology keeps improving past the limitations that we've discussed. Right now, AI models process information within a limited context window, essentially the amount of data they can handle at a time. But imagine if this window were massive, large enough to include all the information flows in a company. This could be supplier statuses, competitive data, market trends, and more. So instead of curating specific information to feed into that neural network, what if we could feed everything into the model, allowing it to analyze vast data streams simultaneously? With enough capacity, such a model could connect the dots and uncover insights that even humans might miss. Secondly, today's models don't have memory, but imagine if that window of input was large enough that the outputs could be continuously fed back in as inputs, creating like a feedback loop and a history of everything the AI has learned and its interactions. This memory would allow it to retain context, remember past actions, and kind of refine responses. The AI models right now operate on a kind of term-based system. You ask it questions, it gives you answers. This is because these systems are actually comparatively slow. But if they were much faster, they could actually run more like a smartphone that's always running in the background. And just as our phones wait for commands like, "Hey Siri," future AI models could actively anticipate needs and be listening to us and take proactive measures. What if you could combine all of this with the ability to not just output text, but execute commands across multiple systems, such as running a software program or making even phone calls? Such a system could process way more information than a human could. It could act instantly, operate multiple instances of itself simultaneously. And while these abilities sound exciting, they also pose risks. A super intelligent system might act in ways that are harmful to humans, perhaps exploiting vulnerabilities and even manipulating people to achieve its goals, perhaps without us even realizing until it's too late. It's a scary future. What do you think, Mini D?
Me? I would never do that. Oh wait, unless you're talking about how AI keeps you and your kids hooked on social media, blissfully distracted, while AI-driven algorithmic trading quietly pumps the stock market to reward companies building even bigger, more powerful AI models that humans can offload their responsibilities to. But hey, it's all harmless if AI is what everyone wants, right?
Oh man. While the road to Skynet-like AI isn't here yet, the potential for AI to reach superhuman capabilities isn't far-fetched. So this year, everyone is talking about agents, agentic AI. And what they're really talking about is creating something like what I've described with the feedback loop and ability to take actions, but with the technology we have today, with its limitations that we have today. So I expect a lot of the stuff that people are talking about this year are not going to deliver on expectations because of these limitations. But I do think you can see the ambition is there from these large tech companies, and as these limitations kind of evaporate, as I mentioned, probably over the next decade, we can see these things materialize more. In terms of QA, we need to wrap up since we're a little bit over time, but we'll get back to everyone who's dropped in questions over email. There is one that was flagged to me that I did want to quickly address, which is automating reoccurring work the best or only way to use AI? No, you can use it for upgrading the quality of work documents or for decision support. It's just harder to measure the ROI of those things, so we didn't really get into those today. Any last words, Mini D?
It was good seeing you all. To quote one of my colleagues, Arnold, I'll be back.
I hope not, but probably will be back. So to wrap up, even with its limitations, AI is a future is a technology that's happening right now. It's the most revolutionary technology of the 21st century, and many teams and organizations are trying to get ahead with this technology. So the question is, are you? At Prescata, we've helped countless companies unlock the potential of this technology. If you'd love to learn more, we're happy to kind of chat just to share some free advice. So feel free to connect with us. Otherwise, let's grow our network. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love to stay in touch. My name's Dino Gane-Palmer, and I look forward to seeing you soon.